Have you ever heard of the Aswang, the Mangalo? What about the Tikbatlong? These are the superstars of Philippine mythology, the creatures that haunt our sleep and fill our comic books. But what if I told you there's another, much older being, lurking in the shadows of Filipino folklore? A creature so ancient that its name is whispered only in the oldest tales from the Visayan Islands. Today, we're digging deep into the forgotten corners of our mythology to uncover the story of the Mangalo. So, who or what exactly are the Mangalo? Unlike the more famous monsters, the Mangalo are a bit of a mystery, their identity shifting through the mists of time. In some of the oldest pre-colonial beliefs, they were considered malevolent, supernatural beings, almost like goblins or sinister spirits armed with dark, unknowable powers. Their name, sometimes spelled Mangalo, is tied to a truly chilling reputation. In the Visayas, long before the Spanish galleons ever reached the shores, the Mangalo were the go-to explanation for one of life's cruelest tragedies, the sudden, unexplained deaths of children and young adults. When a healthy child would suddenly fall ill and pass away, with no obvious cause, communities would whisper that the Mangalo were responsible. The belief was that these creatures would consume the bowels or internal organs of their victims, leaving behind no visible trace of their gruesome work. It's a horrifying image, but it's important to understand the context. In a time before modern medicine, before people understood viruses, bacteria, or genetic conditions, these stories were a way to make sense of the senseless. Sudden infant death syndrome, acute appendicitis, internal bleeding. These were terrifying, inexplicable events. The Mangalo provided a narrative, a face for the invisible enemy that could steal a loved one in the night. It was a way for ancient communities to process their grief and fear, attributing the tragedy to a supernatural force rather than to sheer, random chance. This folkloric explanation gave them a sense of control, however small. If a monster was to blame, perhaps there were rituals or precautions one could take to ward it off. Now, what did these creatures look like? The descriptions of the Mangalo are just as eerie and varied as their deeds. They weren't your typical gnarled, grotesque monsters. In fact, some accounts describe them as having a strange, unsettling beauty. Imagine a being that looks almost human, but just off. Some tales give them unnaturally light-colored hair, a feature that would have been exceptionally rare and striking in the pre-colonial Philippines. This might suggest they were seen as otherworldly outsiders, beings not quite of this world. And to complete the chilling picture, some stories mention they had fangs, a classic marker of a predatory, bloodthirsty entity. This combination of being attractive yet dangerous makes them even more sinister. They could be the beautiful stranger who is secretly a monster, a common and powerful archetype in folklore worldwide. What's truly fascinating is that the Mangalo weren't just random, free-roaming boogeymen. Some mythological genealogies place them within a complex spiritual hierarchy. Certain Visayan myths connect them to powerful deities. For example, some traditions say the Mangalo were once servants or attendants of Baragading Patasinakling Bulawan, a goddess of wealth and greed. This connection is huge. It tells us that the Mangalo were not just mindless beasts, they were part of the sacred, established order of the pre-colonial spiritual world. They had a role to play in the grand cosmic drama, serving powerful gods and goddesses. This elevates them from simple monsters to beings with a purpose, woven into the very fabric of ancient Visayan cosmology. They represented the darker, more destructive aspects of the divine, a necessary, albeit terrifying, part of the natural balance. As beliefs evolved and merged over time, especially with the influence of new stories and cultures, the lines began to blur. In later folklore, the Mangalo's identity sometimes blends with other nature spirits. They are described as living near bodies of water, like rivers or the sea, or dwelling deep within enchanted forests. This blurs the line between the Mangalo and the Encanto, the beautiful and often morally ambiguous elemental spirits of Philippine folklore. Are the Mangalo a type of Encanto, or are they something else entirely? This ambiguity is common in oral traditions, where stories are constantly being retold and reinterpreted. It suggests that the Mangalo archetype was flexible enough to absorb new characteristics, becoming a catch-all term for various dangerous spirits tied to the wild, untamed places of the world. So, what was the cultural purpose of these terrifying stories? On a very practical level, the Mangalo served as a powerful cautionary tale. Like many mythical creatures around the world, they were a way to enforce social norms and ensure safety. Stories of the Mangalo would have been used to warn children not to wander off alone, especially near dark forests or rivers where these beings were said to dwell. It was a way to keep kids close to the village and out of harm's way. For adults, the Mangalo were a reminder to respect the spiritual world. They represented the dangerous forces that exist just beyond the veil of human understanding. To avoid their wrath, one had to maintain good relations with the spirits, perform the proper rituals, and live in harmony with the community and with nature. They embodied the consequences of disrespecting the old ways and the unseen world. But on a deeper, psychological level, the Mangalo, like so many other creatures in our folklore, were a tool for confronting mortality. Life in the ancient world was fragile. Disease, accidents, and unexplained deaths were a constant reality. By creating a being like the Mangalo, people gave a name and a form to their deepest anxieties about loss and the fragility of life. Blaming a supernatural creature for a child's death was, in a way, less painful than accepting that life could be so randomly and cruelly extinguished. The monster could be feared, hated, and perhaps even fought with charms and prayers. It provided a focal point for communal grief and a shared cultural script for how to deal with tragedy. It's a testament to human resilience and our innate need to create meaning, even in the face of overwhelming sorrow. So, where are the Mangalo today? Why don't we see them in movies or on TV like we do the Aswang or the The truth is, the Mangalo have largely faded from the national consciousness. They have become a relic of a more regional, more ancient belief system. As the Philippines became more unified, certain myths from dominant cultural groups, like the Tagalogs, became more widespread, while others, like the Visayan Mangalo, became more localized. The dramatic shape-shifting Aswang was simply a more compelling and adaptable monster for modern storytelling. However, that doesn't mean the Mangalo have vanished completely. If you travel to certain parts of the Visayas and talk to the elders, you might still hear whispers of them. The name might not be used as frequently, but the core idea persists. Stories about mysterious spirits that cause sudden sickness or eat the life force of their victims are still told in rural communities. These modern tales might not call the creature a Mangalo, but the folkloric DNA is still there. It's a quiet legacy, a faint echo of a time when these beautiful, fanged creatures were the ultimate explanation for life's most painful mysteries. The story of the Mangalo is a powerful reminder that Philippine mythology is not a monolith. It's a vast, diverse tapestry woven from hundreds of different cultural threads. For every famous monster we know, there are dozens of others waiting to be rediscovered in the old stories and forgotten epics of our ancestors. These creatures are more than just scary monsters. They are windows into the minds of the people who created them. They show us how our ancestors saw the world, how they coped with fear, and how they made sense of the beautiful, terrifying, and mysterious universe around them. So the next time you think about Philippine folklore, I encourage you to look beyond the usual suspects. Dig a little deeper, and you might just find a forgotten creature like the Mangalo, a being that tells a story not just of fear, but of resilience, belief, and the incredible richness of our cultural heritage. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into one of the Philippines' most obscure mythical creatures. If you enjoyed this exploration of forgotten folklore, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the shadows. Let me know in the comments which mythical being you'd like me to cover next. Until then, stay curious.